Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Pit Against a Live Flesh and Blood Call-In Show. I'm William, Table and Legs, and I'm joined by my constant co-host, Kevin SirSmurphington. Kevin, what's up?
What's up?
Pit Against is a live call-in show. If you'd like to be live on air talking to us about your hot take, join the Pit Against Discord by clicking on the link that's in the description. Then join the waiting room channel, and you can put your hot take in the topics text channel, and then we can take your take. If we like your take, you can take your take and pull you in the mic check, and then pull you on air. Basically, if you got something you want to talk about,
Speedrun.
Let us know. We'll pull you on. We'll talk about it. Flesh and Blood hot takes. LSS had a hot take.
Apparently,
LSS had a hot take.
Yeah.
Actually, I didn't pull it up. I meant to pull it up. How have you been,
Yeah.
Kevin? We'll start with that. How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah.
Starting to spin things back up a little bit for Chicago coming up. That's next big event for me.
Yep.
Excited to watch Portland. Excited to have coverage again for events because we didn't have coverage at all for a calling and 2 battle hardens this last weekend.
Felt so weird.
I understand. I understand why they did it because limited callings don't get good coverage rates. All that stuff. I understand. It still makes me personally sad.
Yeah.
Me as an individual, I understand LSS and community, the reasons for it. I'm still allowed to be sad about it.
I also am sad about it. I like tuning into stuff. I don't know. I just I don't know how to word it better than just, I
want the game
excited
to be big enough that coverage for all of those events is worth it.
A limited battle harden.
It was a calling.
Oh. I'm saying, okay, so what would get the least amount of views, right? A limited battle harden? Like
limited PQs.
Limited PQ. Okay.
I mean, okay.
I don't need coverage for PQs.
Let's take Battle Harden Plus. Yeah, it's going to be a sealed draft Battle Harden.
Yeah.
It's going to be the lowest coverage.
I want me on camera for that then, because I'm about the lowest bar you could get for a commentator.
I think there might be like there are issues with that. I think for like how they handle coverage, where it's like if they're willing to take people who do coverage for free for smaller events, why wouldn't they just take people who do coverage for free for bigger events?
True.
It also becomes part of the issue, which I understand.
Yeah.
The issue for the casters on that side of it.
It's also an issue in the sense of just like you don't know what there doesn't feel like there's a level of responsibility on the casters if they're for free, and it leads to a whole bunch of things. But it would be great if you could even get casters who call in, not necessarily at the tournament venue, but just like somebody casting something at these kind of events would be awesome.
Well, it's like Australian Nats, I think for the last 2 years has had people remotely cast it, where they get a stream from the venue, and then over Discord you have 2 people commentating it, and then that stream is then put out onto YouTube.
Okay. It'd be great if we could get that for everything.
Neat.
At least that. Yeah. Because I remember when I first started playing Flesh and Blood, and you'd hear about these you'd hear about these battle hardens, and that's it. You'd hear they're coming up, and then you'd hear what happened afterwards. And now I'm kind of used to the idea of seeing coverage every weekend. So
I think it's a little. I understand because the battle harden in Florence was Blitz. The battle harden in Columbus was LL. And I would have liked to have coverage of those, even if they're not going to give us coverage of the limited event. I understand SCG is a whole thing for them and all that stuff. And then but like they've run coverage for the battle hardens, and like maybe they didn't want to because it's Blitz.
Maybe.
I don't know. Maybe it was just things lining up. But
you run battle hardened Blitz coverage, and it's just the chat memeing Blitz for hours and hours.
What that might not be conducive. Spend their time and man hours on. I understand that.
I remember when LSS used to say that Blitz was the main format of Flesh and Blood,
the most popular
format in Flesh and Blood. So more hot takes from LSS. They
Yeah.
had a a scheduled ban and restricted announcement the other week, and we talked about
Like
it.
2.5 weeks ago.
Yeah, we talked about it. We talked about it with Mara, right?
Week and a half ago. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
No? What did we talk to
It was
Mara?
the 11th, so it was 10 days ago. No, Mara, we did predictions with Mara
Okay,
on what the bans would be.
sure.
'Cause
We did.
she predicted Tome of Aetherwind would get banned or restricted in LL.
That didn't happen.
No.
Uh, but what LSS did say in this article that people have been clinging to, and
Yeah.
I think is really interesting, is
Mhm.
they're going over the ban of Count Your Blessings in Class
Yep.
Constructed, and they start with the line
CYB blue
CYB
only.
blue specifically. So you still have yellows and you still have reds. My definition of a control deck, this is James White speaking, Mr. The Jimmy Blanco.
Yeah.
His definition of a control deck in the broad context of trading card games is a deck
Yep.
whose whole strategic premise is to neutralize the threats of the opponent. I agree
Yep.
with that. To
Yep.
fast forward a bit, in the context of Flesh and Blood, neutralizing the opponent's threats typically takes the form of diminishing the threat density in an opponent's deck to the point where they're incapable of presenting enough damage to reduce their life total to 0. Fast forward a bit more. Count Your Blessings Enigma is what a control deck looks like in Flesh and Blood, period. That single line, it's so snappy and it's so well put. Count Your Blessings Enigma is what a control deck looks like in Flesh and Blood. Just
Ooh.
letting the people know. I love
And
it.
some people hate that
Yes.
statement
Oh, they're
so much.
so mad about that.
I think it is. If you went back 2 years ago
Hmm.
and said this about Oldham with like full power Oldham with Crown of Seeds,
Hmm.
and he like had gone fully defensive, like I think we saw it calling Indy in 23, where he had like Warhorn to blow up Frost Hexes.
What a time.
Like people didn't like that either.
No.
This is not the people who are so you have to have some amount of a control deck in
Hmm.
this game. And it's just like he's right. A control deck, your thing is that you neutralize the opponent's threats until they like have none left, their hand is empty. Like,
And real briefly, the
yeah.
reason you have to have a control deck, because some people I've heard, I can think of a few names immediately, don't think you need to have a control deck. Well, one, it might be inevitable. It might not be. You might be able to make a game where it's not. But if you don't have a control deck, you're alienating a part of the population, a part of the player base that really likes this kind of game plans.
Mhm.
Also, it's sometimes hard to draw the line on what's a control deck. I've heard people in
Yeah.
Magic say mono red burn is a control deck because you are limiting their options in the game, but their
No.
options is turn 4, right? So they can't have
Sh-
one. They can't have a turn 4. So how do you play the game from there? Um,
Yeah.
eh,
Sure.
uh,
No.
you, if you want a well-balanced game with a healthy ecosystem of both players and decks and a good meta that like encompasses a variety for people to pick through while showing skill expression, all that jazz, you need an amount of control in the game, and more specifically, you probably just need a control deck, like
Yeah.
a deck that
I,
controls.
I think so. Because like otherwise you get either aggro soup or mid range soup. And
Mid-range
people
soup.
also don't like that either.
Gross soup.
Um, like where it is
Yeah.
purely what is
Yeah.
the best burn deck,
Hmm.
or what is the just raw good stuff pile
Yeah.
deck,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
that's also not interesting.
Which is kind of where
And
I
then
feel like Magic's been for a while lately. Is
it
their cards are
Magic
so
Standard has been there for a long time,
yeah, their cards
not
are
a long
so
time.
powerful that every deck feels
Yeah,
like a mid-range deck, and it's just mid-range soup.
I think aside from like Nadu in the
Hmm.
last like 6 months, and
Yeah,
maybe like the energy deck that
but those are
has,
like
but that's just an
combo
aggro deck.
decks. Yeah.
Like those are just combo decks because you have like insanely busted cards, which are
Mhm.
not fitting into that triangle. They're breaking those break all three sides of it,
Yeah.
pretty much.
Yeah.
Nadu especially is a good example of that. But like I I think people have issue with the way James put that sentence, in particular because of Enigma. And they don't like Enigma. They don't they didn't like Oldhim either. But this is the way it works, where it's just like, yeah, half the game doesn't like the control decks. That's just always going to be a thing.
Yeah.
And you're not. I'm going to be kind of blunt here on this one. Just
Mhm.
saying you don't like Enigma because it's a control deck and it doesn't let you do the thing you want. It's like that's a part of card games. That's a
It's a
part of every card game.
yeah. Card games are
That's
give
just
and
like,
takes, right?
yeah, your opponent has a say, and control is the ultimate. I'm going to interact with your thing. My whole thing is interacting with your thing.
Yeah. It's
That's
interesting
all I'm doing.
because one of the biggest like draws to Flesh and Blood is it's one of the and actually what they say about this for most games, right? So like Legends of Runeterra also got a ton of praise for this.
Yeah.
More interaction leads
Yes.
to more dynamic gameplay, and it also leads to oh, I was so excited about thinking of the word dynamic, I forgot the other word. But like the idea is just that um when you can interact with it, your opponent,
So
it creates a bunch of these different things, and it
it's
leads
a
to
larger variety of game
skill.
states.
Yeah, large. Yeah, that's exactly what I mean by dynamic, and it leads to skill expression because it gives you a bunch of more questions to
Choices.
answer and
Yeah.
choices, and you have to have some amount of that. It can't just be two burn
I'm doing
decks
my
against each
thing
other.
at you doing your thing, and then whoever's thing is better, that's it. It doesn't matter. Like that was
Hmm.
like it that is not interesting to me. That's why I
Hmm.
loved Icelander as a deck, because you are interacting with your opponent on every single turn.
Yep.
And it's like, so then people, I think people don't like are latching onto this one because like they don't like control decks, and it's a favorite pastime of theirs to complain about control decks because they just want to do their thing.
Yeah.
Um, I think people also are latching onto saying that CYB Enigma is what a control deck looks like. I think they're looking at this the wrong way.
Okay.
They're saying people, I think, are reading that as CYB Enigma is the control deck. This is what a control deck does, rather than a control deck is conceptually doing what CYB Enigma is doing, which is neutralizing all your threats.
So I
It
think
is an
yeah.
example, like it is a good example of what control in Flesh and Blood looks like and has always looked like since Oldhim came out, which
So
is
yeah.
I'm going to neutralize all of your threats
Hmm.
and you won't be able to kill me with them, and that's it. And then I win by inevitability, which is the standard game plan for control decks across the genre. And if you
Yeah.
have an issue with that, you don't have an issue with CYB Enigma, you have an issue with control.
So I have two things I want to talk about with this. I'll go over the easier one first, which is why I think okay, here's one argument that I feel like I'm hearing a lot against CYB Enigma is that it's uninteractive
Sure.
because you on your turn or on their turn, you gain life which doesn't directly interact with what they're doing.
Yes.
You just are gaining life. You're not blocking their cards, you're not looking at the on hits they're doing. I mean, you are, but like you're with the life gain specifically, you're just gaining the life and you're
Yes.
going to play solitaire with that. And I think that's a little hypocritical because the people complaining
Sure.
about control decks are wanting to play their Phi decks that
Yep.
don't
Are
get
not
interacted with and you
interacting.
just play solitaire. You just play
Yeah,
out your 3 go again, 3 go again, 3 go again, 4 go again, whatever the
yeah.
sequence is. And
In large part, I think those people are one and the same. And I
Mhm.
will give them one thing in that their this control deck is one of the less interactive control decks we've had because it is count your blessings. It is just because they took a little bit of the control deck. This is one way to neutralize their threats, which is just out heal them. The
Yeah.
other way is to the other defensive way is to block all of them, and you get much more interaction that way. You get much more back and forth that way. The third way is to remove them from their deck,
You said the
which is
other when you said block all of them, and I was like, wait. That's not the only ways. But yeah, go ahead. Go ahead and say it.
if you remove all the cards from their deck, say
That
with
was probably the
new,
most fun. Yeah.
that CYB new is a significantly better control deck for the game
Hmm.
than CYB Enigma.
For the game being the key part.
Yes.
Because I feel like I'd argue when you're defining the word control, like defining the term control deck,
Yeah.
Enigma probably fits the bill better.
In terms of like purely stylistically, yes, I
Yes.
would agree with that.
Like on paper. Like on definitions, like
Yes. But I think CYB new is also a control deck and it's doing something, but it is proactive and interactive about it, which I like because it is taking that disruptive side that like
Mhm.
Icelander had, where it's like, I'm going to stop you from doing your things. I'm not just going to sit here and take all your things and say, I don't care. I out heal it. It's, I'm going to stop you from doing your things. And what you can do, I can out heal because that's better value than just actually swinging a dagger,
I it's
which is like such a
yeah.
small and simple thing. But like new just like flips the turn cycle on its head a little bit, and it's suddenly a much healthier thing for the game. It's a more interactive thing. It may not be as fun. It's stopping you from doing your thing, but again, your problem is with control.
Yeah. Um
But at the same time, you get to interact with that. They
yeah.
have to take damage to hold those cards, to
Yeah.
send a leave no witnesses, to
Exactly.
send a surgical extraction. Like
Yeah. Um
I think people are overall overreacting to that statement. Uh
I think so too. So one thing that I thought was interesting that I've been thinking about like what control decks kind of look like in Flesh and Blood, because what are some control decks we've had? We've had Prism, old Prism,
Old Tank Prism from
yeah,
like
old Tank
Monarch
Prism,
days.
old Him, Icelander,
Turtle
new
Katsu,
Enigma, Katsu. Katsu's a really interesting one. Because that's
Fatigue,
like,
Ira, and Blitz,
yeah.
Drone.
And so what it feels like a lot of these decks do, if you take a step back and you stop thinking about genres of decks, but then you're also like not thinking about Flesh and Blood, but just like turn over turn or game over game, what they're doing is they're
Mhm.
doing a lot of nothing until they can get some kind of setup, and then they win with that setup. Like
Yeah,
the most basic example being that Turtle Katsu deck, where it's I just present value at you and on hits, which the on hits are like draw a card, and then eventually we get down to the point where I can go Kadachi Kadachi drone, Kadachi Kadachi drone. You have to block all of that because you're a one life.
yep.
And that
And I
that
run you
wins.
out of cards.
Yeah. And so that's their little game
Yeah,
ending combo is Kadachi Kadachi drone. So in the same respect, I feel like all the decks were kind of doing that, right? So like,
yeah. They had some way to close out the game, which was Oldhim just has a hammer.
yeah,
Enigma has Chi, where she can get
but they
6 value out of a
also
turn cycle.
they also felt really slow in the early game. Like they have
Yes.
to set up a little bit. Like Icelander plays Insidious Chill.
Yeah.
Prism plays Auras.
Well, it's like
Um
even Icelander. you could play like a very hard control plan with Frost Hex, or you
Hmm.
could play kind of the way I did, which was a much more, or I guess the way Bullander did, which was a much more tempo oriented plan, where you're not trying to like Frost Hex everyone out of the game.
Yeah.
There's a couple people you have to Frost Hex, but
Yeah.
you're also just like, I'm also just going to outvalue you because I just like mess with your stuff just enough that my
And
stuff
then
is better.
yeah, and
And
it's
then I have Striders.
Striders is Striders is a heck of a card. Um, but
Uh-huh.
like Frost Hex was almost like a, if I can use the wrong word in the wrong place just for making a point, it was almost like a silver bullet to some
It,
decks.
it was your inevitability.
Yeah, it was your inevitability. It was
Yeah.
not for everyone, and not for
Yes.
every game. It's just, are you gonna make me do it? You gonna make
When
me
I needed
play
it,
out the game? You
it
got
was
it.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um.
100%. It was there were so many times like I would break down a meta with like testing group
Mhm.
and they'd be like, "How's this matchup?" And I'm like, "It's fine. I do my value thing long term and it's good." And they're like, "What happens if they try and fatigue?" And I'm like, "I just frost hex them.
Yeah.
I don't care." And they're like,
You know, I
yeah, you can
I
just do that." I'm
very
like,
specifically remember you saying that line. You're like, "Well, if they fatigue me, I frost hex
"Yeah,
them."
they don't have a way to blow up my frost hexes. I can
Yeah.
just forever into
Yeah.
them."
Um. So I guess that leads me to the ultimate problem with this conversation. About, well, actually, what I was gonna say is the reason I brought that up is I'm very excited about Jarl because I've been playing games of him, and it feels like in the early game it's slow or you're
Yes.
disadvantaged. Um,
He he is an
and then
interesting balance
yeah.
where it's like it's not quite the flesh and blood you start at full strength,
Hmm.
but it is definitely not you just become this overwhelming thing in
It's
late game. It's just like you just change stances.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really good way to word it. Okay, so the way I was thinking of it was, I like that actually, because the way I think of it is as the opponent is going down, at, let's say, a 45-degree angle over the course of a game. Jarl is going down at, like, he's starting lower,
He's
but
starting lower, he dips less,
he dips less. Yeah, and that's
and then
just
he comes
because,
back up a little bit,
yeah,
but
yeah,
not much.
no, 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 and so I feel like Jarl, just to toot Jarl's horn a little bit, is like exactly the kind of control deck LSS want to be pumping out. Kind of like new, where it's like you're you're not the best deck out of the gate, obviously. Your
Yeah.
end game isn't insane. Like it's
Mm-mm.
not Prism with 100
It's
Spectra Shields.
it's fucking daggers. It's new
Yeah.
daggers.
Yeah.
And
It's new daggers.
it is a 2 card hammer for 6, pole
Yeah.
arm for 6, which is a very good late game.
Yeah. With an on hit.
You're
Yep.
gonna deck people really fast.
Yes. You literally 3 turn cycles of throwing that hammer, and oh, hi pup. 3 turn cycles of throwing that pole arm, and any advantage they've had in deck just is completely gone.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Just because
Uh
like it's 6. That's 2 cards out of their deck.
yeah. And nothing out of mine. It's great.
Yeah.
So I think the ultimate, so I'm excited about Yarrow. I think he seems really good, and I like the deck that I built for him, and I'm very excited to play him. But I think the ultimate problem with uh anybody complaining about control, and the reason it's become white noise, I do like bringing this up and having a conversation about it because I feel like it's just a thing that keeps happening. We get new players in and they have the same questions. But like, the ultimate problem is someone's complaining about everything. There's not a deck with no complaints. Name a deck
Sure.
that has no complaints.
I don't think there is one.
There can't be.
There well, yes.
Even Betsy
So,
has the word guardian at the bottom of her card text, so
yes.
someone's going to complain about that.
Yes. So I think this is something that I think it's Mark Rosewater from Magic talked about this.
Ooh.
He had a video that he did where it was like 20 things I learned from designing Magic, and one of them was like it is better to make something that some percentage of people hate and the rest love than it is to make something that everyone is just okay with.
Yeah, like there was I think it was a Russian novelist. I forgot. I'm just going to misattribute it 100%. It was some novelist who was like, there are not good and bad characters. There's not good and evil characters. There is boring and interesting characters. And so in that
Essentially, yes.
similar, it just made me think of it. And I thought,
Yeah.
and I heard that recently and I just wanted to
No,
say
it's
it.
like
But like,
people will not read boring characters. They will read interesting characters, regardless of them being good or
yeah,
evil, because
yeah.
something has to be interesting about them for people to give a shit.
You can
And it's
be
like
mad at
people,
a character, but if you're mad at a character, that means you've invested emotionally into that
yes,
character.
yeah, and you're gonna engage with the character and the medium, whatever it is. And it's like the same is true for card games, where it's like if nobody is saying anything about the card, you have failed. If everyone hates something, you've also failed, but you like
It's
everyone's still
probably better.
engaged with it.
Yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
did do something. You learned something rather
Like,
than just nobody engaging with it and nobody
yeah.
caring. And you're like, I don't know what's wrong with it then.
You
But
got, yeah.
if and then if you have something that the majority of people love and a
hmm
small subset absolutely hate,
hmm
you have done something right.
So, like, examples of this would be, uh, I'm trying to think of like liquefy as a majestic. If anybody in chat knows what liquefy does, word for word, other than Kevin, I've used it on a poor man before. It felt great.
It's so funny.
So liquefy is a card that's good, and it serves the purpose they wanted it
It's
to serve. No one remembers it.
that. It is I would argue that nobody remembers it because it's not good,
Yeah,
but it is doing it. They put it where they could, and
yeah.
I don't think they could realistically have moved it much
hmm I think
in
I think
another
I think
direction.
that's fine, but it is an
Yeah,
example of a card, a majestic that is not
that did not work.
okay. So to shift gears a little bit, a different kind of failure where it was too good. However you described it would be Nadu, where it's like that was a failure. Everyone hated it. It's a
Everyone hated it.
failure because everyone hated it. Everyone hated
Yes,
Nadu, except for the person that probably got first place with it and earned some money.
Simon Nielsen winning the Pro Tour with it.
Simon Nielsen probably doesn't
That Simon
hate it,
Nielsen.
but he
That's
probably
no, he
says it out
probably
loud.
also hates it.
No, he probably
He's
also
just
hates it, but
like,
like a little bit of money
yeah,
makes the hate not feel so bad.
that's Simon Nielsen, who is also Danish national champ and plays Fab at a very high level and
Love that guy. He's the guy who's
just
like
absolute
maybe getting
legend of
one of my
TCGs.
coworkers into the game, which feels great.
Yeah.
Um,
He might be one of the few people in this community that I'm, like, still, like, halfway starstruck when I see him. I'm like,
really?
"Dude's a
I
dude's
well,
an
true.
absolute
I
beast." I
don't
just
know.
wa because I watch him play Magic, and I
Mhm.
haven't talked to him,
Mhm.
and, like, I can go talk to Hamilton at this point
Well, I
because
can't.
I know you yeah. Like, I've talked to him enough through Mara that I can, like, go talk to
True.
Hamilton and all those people, but, like, I see Simon, I'm like, "What the fuck are you doing here?"
Yeah. I
Like, am I at this event for real? Like
without making myself without sounding like a prick or whatever, I've always it's not a problem, so I don't want to call it a problem. Um but I've not had that. I don't get that feeling. I don't go, "Oh." I mean, with Michael
it's
Hamilton,
not like
he's
that.
my no, I mean, with Michael Hamilton, he's like my favorite player that I hope wins every tournament. But
Yeah.
like, I'm not like I can't walk up to him and ask him a question or whatever.
Oh, yeah, I would be fine if I sat down across the table from him and we'd gotten paired for a round, and
Okay,
it'd be fine.
sure.
But I'm still just like, "Damn, he's here? Shit."
Oh, okay. Okay, well then at that level, I feel like that about a lot of people. Well,
Sure.
yeah, I feel like that about a lot of people. I guess like I wouldn't call what you're saying as starstruck.
Sure, yeah. I don't get flustered.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's just like, "Damn,
There's a decent
that
amount
guy's
of
fucking good
people
at
where
games."
if I sat down across from them at the table, I'm like, well, there's always next round, I guess. So
Nah.
I mean, so the ultimate problem is
Yeah.
the last point would be a card that everyone likes, or a lot of people like, and some people are definitely going to hate. And I think of Codex every time.
Yes.
It's just
I think
it's a
the
good card,
longer
and
I think the longer we play with
Mhm.
Codex, the more people appreciate its design and like
Well
actually
designed.
how it might be one of their best designed power cards
It's good.
so far.
Yeah, and we
Like,
could wax on about it, but
yeah, but like it is a card that a lot of people hated on release,
Mhm.
which is hilarious next to Three Oak in Lexi.
I forgot who it was. Someone who said that card is easily every time 16 points of value. I forgot who said that, but
Uh,
it's
any number of
so
people probably
funny.
did.
Um, but I think the ultimate problem with uh people being like everyone hates control decks, or it's seeming like everyone hates control decks, is everyone hates any deck, and there's no deck that's not upset
Yes.
about. It's all the time I hear locals, or I hear new players talk about going to an armory and they're complaining about the most oppressive deck they've ever played
Yes.
against in their entire life, Azalea. They get Red in
Which
the Ledger 3 times in a row, and it
yeah,
feels awful.
it
And they're
does.
like, how does anyone play the game if Azalea's in the meta?
You just
You just
do it.
play it. You just play a
Just
deck.
play
You
the
just play the
game.
game. You
I
let
just play Prism and I
yeah.
hit them.
That's a good one. But like,
Yeah.
I mean, people have complained about Phi mirrors. People are
I
complaining about
think
Enigma mirrors.
mirrors are slightly
Mirrors are a little
different.
different. Okay, so I mean, even
I'm willing
still,
to put that in a different category from people just complaining about playing against that deck regardless of what
mhm,
deck you're on.
yeah.
Because mirrors as a whole in Flesh and Blood are not great in my opinion, but that's because of the way like
Interestingly, there's a lot of people in the fighting game community that really hate mirrors, uh, for maybe a similar reason, which is kind of
it's
funny.
yeah, that I I can't say that's surprising because you're kind of doing your thing like it's like two puzzle pieces or like two pieces of a key
Mhm,
except suddenly it's the same half just on the other side. So all the points like are just hitting each other and you're not gonna things don't interact the way you are used to them interacting with every other deck.
mhm.
And it's not because it's like I don't know, like mirrors are weird, but circling back a little bit,
Yes.
like everyone is going to complain about some deck. Everyone's going to hate one deck or another, or not everyone's going to hate one deck or another. Every deck is going to have somebody who hates it
Yes.
because that is a deck that worked.
Yeah.
People don't hate Betsy because of Betsy. People hate Betsy because it's a guardian.
Yeah.
She's a guardian hero.
Yeah.
And it's like there was Oldham had absolutely had haters. I know we were at an RTN during the calling that Pablo Pintor won and LL Oldham at, and we didn't start the event on time because everyone was watching the stream of the finals of that calling, and everyone cheered when Pablo won that and Oldham LL'd.
So crazy.
And it's like there were people who hated Icelander. All the Bolton players came out of the woodwork when Icelander rotated.
Yeah.
When the book bans happened, like people were very divided on that. I know some people
Mhm.
who were very happy with those. I was much more on the apprehensive side because of decks like Enigma. Um, but like that's just gonna happen because it is something that is it's weird because it's almost like it's
Yeah.
not quite the same as like the thing you said about the characters in a story.
Okay.
Because them hating it is not because it's interesting.
My
Not necessarily. Yeah.
Allison in chat, I can't imagine who would hate something just for being a guardian. Um
I think a goat would.
I think a goat would. Uh, well put. Um,
But no, I think that is there are people who hate aggro decks
yeah.
because they're like, no, you just sit there and you don't block and you just do the thing.
If you're not being interactive, you just kind of sit
Yeah.
there.
We had a 3-person armory on Tuesday, so we just do a little round robin.
Yeah,
And I was playing Aurora just for fun because I
sure.
can relax with it.
Yeah.
And I win my round one and I beat Naira. And I then play an Aurora mirror as my other game. And there's no blocking in that mirror
Aurora Mirror.
because you can't block in that mirror because your cards don't block.
True.
So then that was it. And the Ira players watching is like, this is such a wildly different. They're just
Yeah.
half the game is gone.
Yeah.
And I'm like, kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
These are lightning heroes. Lightning aggro heroes. So it's like there are people who don't like aggro decks.
I don't like. I think so. Like right now, we're like Zen's at, or like that
Yep.
specific Zen list where
Yep.
it's like fairly you can do.
It still has flick flacks and sinks in it.
Yeah,
And
it's
or
like
it has
pretty
wax
mid-range.
on.
It's
Yeah.
it's not Ira, but it's not
Yes.
Aurora.
Yep.
That would be the kind of deck I would want to take to a mid-tier to big event because it's doing something powerful.
Yep.
Which I would kind of argue Ira isn't. It's doing
By
something.
comparison, no.
Yeah. It's doing something powerful that can win games, especially against players who did not bring something powerful, basically. And
Sure.
then
It has a
it
very good balance of that,
yeah.
like power and consistency.
Yeah, I think I really like that.
Yeah.
Because I like to talk about how much I love control decks, and I do love playing them and Guardians, but like at bigger events, also having something powerful to do is great. And I don't know. I thought that was interesting because I don't hear anyone complaining about Zen right now, and I think Zen's pretty good.
Yeah. People
So
aren't complaining about him because he doesn't have the ridiculous pop off turns that he did in Art of War
I mean,
Harmony.
he could still
It
have
is
a
not the
pop-off
same.
turn. I know it's not
Yeah,
the
but
same,
it's
so everyone's like forgotten. But I think I'm getting off topic. Or I guess actually we can transition this to the other topic, which is where's the meta at right now? Right?
Mhm.
Like in CC? Like, what is the meta right now?
I mean it's
I'm under the assumption Jarl is like out with this conversation.
sure if Jarl was playable,
Does
so
he?
Portland plus Jarl, he doesn't move the meta a ton, I
I don't
think.
think so.
Um I think his like Aurora might move her deck a little bit for it. I think Enigma is still like a massive problem for him.
Mm-hmm.
And there isn't much he really can do about it at the moment. Um, I Viscerai still looks very good right now. Enigma still looks very good right now. Aurora's very solid. Zen is a nice little. It is solid into all three of those. He's not
Mm-hmm.
a counter per se, but
Yeah.
got
He's got good matchups.
he is not he is even to favored into all of those.
Mm-hmm.
And then who else is around there?
This was the question
Hmm.
I was thinking of, and I couldn't put it to words / forgot part of it, which was for a while now we've had Aurora Viscerai at least as I'm gonna call them tier 1 decks, or at least people are
Yeah.
talking about them like they are, right? Aurora and
Yeah.
Viscerai. Is there another, would you say, like aggro deck? Like in the meta?
Zen.
Zen? Okay,
I would still classify Zen as an aggro deck.
sure. I mean, there are some very powerful aggressive things that he wants to do. High
Yeah.
value.
He
So
still has Ancestral Harmony and Chase the Tail. Chase the Tail is a 1 for 7 with go again.
So
That's
yeah, no,
pretty good, it
it's
turns out.
great, but what these three decks are doing is they're messing with my paradigm of how meta works, right? So when evaluating a meta, I start with, okay, what's the aggro deck in the
Mhm.
format? Because there's one, right? Because there's one high value aggro
Usually,
deck that the idea is whenever you have aggro mirrors, this one comes out on top.
assuming they're not all roughly equal, yes.
Are these all roughly equal?
Yes.
Holy frick. How do you
This is
do that? My
their numbers
goodness.
have to be basically the same, but also, like, the power turns have to be roughly the same consistency and roughly the same value, which they kind of are. Like,
Yeah,
an Arc Lightning turn is roughly akin to a Mordred Tide turn, which is roughly akin to a Harmony turn.
that's insane. Have
Like,
LSS cracked the code? They've learned how to
like
build their own game.
this is I don't think anyone can reasonably say that, like, any of those three. They can't say that any of those three decks are purely better than the other two, just
Okay,
straight up.
fair enough.
Um, because, like, all of them can just absolutely mega high roll
Mm-hmm.
and just do silly, silly things and present a 30 damage turn.
Mm-hmm.
They aren't going to do that consistently. They're more likely to have a high roll that's a 22 damage turn, which is
Mm-hmm.
still very good, but also much more manageable. Because if you, like, full block that, that's only like 8 leaks instead of
Yeah,
15,
and
16.
that's pretty good considering. Um, how am I putting this? Like considering aggro decks that we've known in the past, where they have their pop off turns and their Zen or
Yeah,
their old Briar or
yeah,
whatever, and like these are like actually manageable pop off
it-
turns.
yeah. Well, I mean, this is aggro decks without books.
Yeah, I guess so. I kind of I'm
Like, it
kind of
is.
enjoying no books, but
Yeah, no, they have done a good job with the game post book bans. And I think this is exemplified in the fact that we have 3 solid tier 1 aggro
mhm,
decks, and none of them are tier 0. None of them are tier 0.5.
that's so crazy. Wow, tier 0.5 is a that doesn't exist to me, but yes.
Sure, but, like, there's nothing that's, like, even a half step above
Yeah.
the other 2 because
Yeah.
they all have play into each other, and they all have different matchup spreads into the rest of the field. And some
That's
people are gonna say,
crazy.
"Well, Viscera is the best one," or "Zen is the best one," or "Aurora is the best one," but it's
And
like,
that's just the one
because
they
nobody
played the
can
most
agree,
recently. True, yeah, also.
like, I'm gonna say they're all roughly equal because no one can agree. If
Until
one
we
was clearly
yeah, until we get an
better,
event where you get like 5 Auroras in top 8 or something like that.
yeah,
Uh
if we put 5 Viscera in top 8, then
mhm.
sure,
Yeah, then we have
okay.
an answer, but I think it makes evaluating the meta odd because
Yeah,
typically you find the best aggro deck and you extrapolate outwards from there, right? What
you
beats
find
that?
the best numbers deck.
Yeah. And then what beats that? And then what beats
Yeah,
the thing that beats that? And then also what are the matchup spreads for each one of them? How consistent are they? You know, like
yeah.
you build your meta around I've always built my meta understandings around what's the best aggro deck. And when there's three, that makes it really interesting.
Yeah, and they're all different, like, significantly different aggro decks, and, like,
Hmm.
Zen is purely physical, Aurora has a sprinkling of arcane, and then Viscera is, like, half arcane to 2/3 arcane,
Yeah.
which also makes things different. And I know that this is something that, like, I know people going to Portland who have drastically changed their sideboards just to have more blues for Viscera because they need it for the arcane for AB,
Yeah.
whereas they don't care about it into Aurora.
That's so
Like,
crazy.
yeah.
Um, do you think that makes it and this is a thing that I always think is funny to talk about, which is does that make it too hard to plan for an event? Like as
Um,
a like let's say someone playing specifically for money results, they travel to these events. This isn't a local
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
Portland. This is someone who's I shouldn't say, I'm not going to say
Th-
like
This is
trying to
a
spike an event, but like they're
it's
trying to.
it's a Brody or a Fang.
Yeah. How would they evaluate a meta like this that seems pretty? It's like actually kind of open, but then also like it's spread in really interesting ways.
It has a couple kind of pillars
Mm-hmm.
in that it has Enigma, it has the three aggro decks, which are all like slightly different, but
Mm-hmm.
doing enough of the same things that it's not like crazy.
Yeah.
And then you've got like other people hanging out. You got like Florian hanging out. You got Prism hanging out. Um, CYB might still be there, but is not nearly the threat that it was, which means you don't need as much tech and yada yada.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is another meta that's going to really reward you having the reps on your deck. And I know that we kind of say this a lot, but like if you understand, if you have, this is a meta where you should pick your deck early and you should just be getting more and more reps on it. And you need to understand the matchups and the way your deck interacts with the other deck more, or like more than your opponent.
Yeah. Would you say
And
this? I remember the last time we talked about something about this was we were talking to Nathan Crawford about picking. I think it was Nathan Crawford around that time when we were talking about specialists and
yeah,
picking, not necessarily picking for the meta. You want to pick a good deck in the meta, but not picking for the meta. You're picking what's best for you in the meta,
yeah,
and then you're just gonna skill check everyone.
not necessarily
Not
skill check
necessarily. Yeah,
everyone, but you need to know your deck.
and others.
You have to know the matchup enough to get better than 50% into
Hmm.
whoever you sit down across from. Whether that is you only need to know very little because it's Prism versus Hold'em in LL, or if you need to know that a ton because it's Icelander and a Dromai.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing I'm looking at where it's like, okay, as Viserai and Zen, there's a lot of back and forth on when Zen pops Kasaya
Hmm.
to make a Zen state token
Hmm.
because it just blanks all the rune
Yeah.
chants.
Yeah.
And then Zen knowing when to do that, and Viserai knowing how to play around that, and then that back and forth is really important for that matchup.
Yeah.
Because I've heard Zen players say it's free. I've heard Viserai players say it's easy to just get them to pop it, and we make 15 rune chants on those 2 turns. Zen state goes away, and then we kill them
Hmm.
because you can't stop 15 rune chants.
No. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So like
and then it's
that's
like,
a good point.
and then I've had Zen players go, all right, well, I'm going to block 3 cards or I'm going to play 3 card hands, and I'm literally going to hold a chi until you send the first rune chant. And then I just pop Kasaya then. And then it's like this back and forth starts happening. It's like whoever plays that better is probably going to decide the matchup.
Yeah.
Like that's what I'm talking about. It's like pick
It
one, pick the side that you want to
yeah.
be on, you think you want to be on, and just get a better understanding of that matchup than anyone you're going to sit down across from, because that's how you're going to get wins.
Like picking Aurora, so you don't have to do all that
Or yeah,
jumping through hoops that we just talked
yeah,
about. But
100%.
I mean,
But
there's
then
different ones they do. Yeah.
you still have to play around Zen state. Your arc lightning into
Yes.
Zen state
Oh,
doesn't do anything.
that also does that. It's so wildly interesting, these
Yeah,
levels that the decks can pull out. And I think it is actually a really good point to make. And it's not the same way with every meta, but it does seem to be the way with this meta definitely, which is, have your deck. It still needs to be probably tier one. Like it could
it
be a tier
it
two
needs
deck,
to
but
be
like if,
it needs to have a reasonable enough baseline that you
mhm,
can then get the rest of the way through
mhm,
winning matchups into everything.
yes. Uh this needs to be it needs to be a deck that you easily just you already win your armories with.
Yes.
Yeah.
If unless your armories are like actually ridiculous for some reason,
Yeah.
you should be able to win armories with whatever deck you're taking. Well, okay. I'm going to put a caveat on that.
Okay.
Armories tend to have very localized metas in which heroes you're going to face.
Mhm.
So I'm going to put a caveat on that. If you were to take the meta you expect
Mhm.
and give it to armory level players, you should win your armories. And I'm
Sure.
putting it this way for a reason.
Yeah.
In
Okay.
the month leading up to Amsterdam,
Mhm.
I did not do better than 1 and 2 at Armories with Prism.
Oh, just because
There
of the
was 0 Zen,
way. Oh, okay.
and there was 2 Leviah, which is a very bad matchup for Prism.
Levias definitely do something to Prism, all right. That's
And
so
I
disappointing.
saw there were no Levias at Amsterdam. And
No.
so I go to Amsterdam and I go
Yeah.
5 and 3 in CC.
I think it's more obviously
And it's
we know that I mean more of like a in concept kind of
yes,
thing.
if you were to hand
Yeah.
those decks that you expect to be there and give them to the average Armory player,
Yeah.
you should be able to beat them.
The idea should be that you still I hesitate to
You
say
shouldn't
don't play a
lose to
tier.
Talishar once.
Yeah, there we go. Like I
That's
think yeah,
it.
I think the thing is like you should pick a deck. I don't want to say don't pick a tier 2 deck because there's a lot of reasonable tier 2 decks. Like I'd
Yeah,
probably I don't know. KO's reasonable. I don't know how many tournaments he's going to win, but like you can't be
he
upset about
is
picking it.
he is fun.
Yeah. And so like you should probably pick the best deck that you can. Um and then also know it inside and out.
If your goal is to win,
If your goal is to win. Do as well as you can. If your goal is to do as well as you can.
you should this is a little bit circular because once you choose your deck, you should be realistic about what you can expect to do with that deck.
Okay.
And this is circling around to the other side of it, which is like
Mhm.
in our testing group, we don't care what deck you play at any event.
Okay.
We just want you to we want to make sure that you acknowledge the strengths and weaknesses of that deck going into the event, and therefore how realistic it is that you do well with it.
That's a good mindset to have.
Because that is the flip side of that coin. You're approaching it from the other side, which
Mhm.
is you're not picking a deck just to win, but you are still realistic about what you expect to do with that deck.
Mhm.
You should be realistic about how well you expect to do if you take Betsy to this event.
Yes.
And that's
Yeah.
not the same thing as saying you must pick this deck to play at this event. But if your goal is to just go there and play the calling and get reps at a calling,
Yeah.
and you really want to pick Betsy, you can.
Yeah. It's like
You you may not you're
yeah.
probably not going to do very well, and you
No.
may not even get good reps with it because the deck is so weak. And at that point, I'm going to be like, I don't know if you even have a good time at a competitive event with Betsy right now.
Yeah. I
But I'm
mean
going to
like
say that
but
because your
yeah.
goal is to get good reps.
So like if your goal is to just have fun with Betsy, uh
Side events.
sure, I guess, but I mean like you take it to a
Like,
big event, you're just happy if you make 2. You're actually throwing a party if you're buying everyone dinner if you make day 2 on Betsy.
oh yeah,
Yeah. And
100%.
that's the expectation you should have. You're buying everyone dinner if you
Yes,
get first place on Aurora. You're buying everyone dinner if you get first place on or if you get day 2 on Betsy, right?
pretty much.
So like
Yeah,
setting your expectations are always so important in life in general, but
yeah.
also like setting them very well for your deck. And that also means yeah, you can't set good expectations for the deck without proper testing and talking with people.
And
But
understanding like
yeah.
your strengths and weaknesses as a player, which also go like this is a circular process.
Mhm.
Like, do you select your deck based on your goals, or do you set your goals based on the deck you choose?
It's a bit of both,
And
right?
it yes, you have to decide which
Mhm.
angle you're going to go from.
Yeah.
And usually, what
Mhm.
happens is you set goals based on the deck you choose, and then you start testing, and you're like, I can't meet these goals any longer.
Yep.
I'm going to switch decks
Yep. Yeah.
and
Exactly.
maybe have decent shot at
Yeah.
hitting my goals.
There are some people who like, okay, well, I only play Dash IE. I've been playing Dash IE since 2013 before the game came out. So uh my expectations are set based on what I understand this deck to be in the meta, how good I expect to be at it. I'm gonna beat some people because I know this deck better than anybody else. I've been playing it since Arcane.
Sure.
But I'm also going to make day 2 and then drop. Like,
And then probably not
yeah.
go much
I'm,
further
I'm gonna
because,
I'm gonna barely make day 2,
yeah.
and then I'm gonna just play out the day even though I'm not making top 8. or
Yeah,
something.
but like, is your goal to win the event then?
No.
Okay, so you're setting your goals, your expectations
Yeah.
based on your deck choice, and you are being realistic about that, and that's
Mhm.
like all we kind of expect from people going to
Yeah.
these events and competing. Let's
Mhm.
say is that your goal isn't necessarily to win the event, or
Mhm.
your expectation is not that you win the event,
Mhm.
but if you do if you make day 2, you make top 32, you go X in 3
Mhm.
or like whatever. You don't go 0-3 drop, and those are your expectations.
Yeah.
Like, sure.
It
I
can also kind of feel bad if you have high expectations. You brought a really good deck. Um, you bring Aurora and you end up going 1 in 3 drop
and your goal was to make day 2?
at least.
Sure. But like
Yeah,
that's
that feels
also,
awful.
I mean it does, but also you need to be objective about why that happened. Did you set the goal improperly, or did something else happen?
Ooh, the goat has a reaction to everything we're saying. Disagree. Main events for the bad decks is main events for the bad deck is the way to go. It's fun as heck. Don't take it to side events. I think is what
Yeah,
they're trying to say. Take your
sure.
favorite hero, see how far you can go, and that's fun.
Sure. But like that's your expectation. Like that's you're going into the event with that understanding.
Okay.
Which yeah, that's fine. If you want to go like I I went into
Were you
Ant
talking kind of to this statement and then I just wasn't realizing it? I don't know if you read this like a minute ago.
talking to it a little bit,
Okay, because I
but like
I just now read it and so I missed it. And so
yeah.
when you were saying things like, "Yeah, but your expectation isn't to win," and I'm like, "Well, yeah, yeah, sure, but uh,
I mean like if you're like this question changes like on these are two different questions of what deck am I taking to win and what can I expect to do if I take my deck.
mhm.
Like those are fundamentally two different questions in the way you are competing.
Don't you co-sign me to the side events."
It's,
Well, I don't know. The EV on some of those side events, like at Worlds or
it's
whatever,
actually
is
pretty
pretty
good.
good.
It's pretty good.
But I mean that's if your goal is around EV. So
Yeah, but that's the goal you're setting, and
yeah,
even and then it's like, well, I'm gonna go skill check a bunch of people in side events with Betsy and hit him over the head,
Aaron
and
did
that's
that
and
a
that's
while
not
ago. That was
unreasonable.
great.
Yeah,
Oh, I forgot what he said. Did he make the top 8 in a Pro Quest with CYB Betsy? I think he did.
he might have.
Freaking hilarious. Oh, it was Diana did really well at the Battle Hardened with CYB Bravo. That's what I'm
Diana
remembering.
played CYB Bravo, and
At a
she
Battle
beat a
Hardened
new
so
at like
well.
PQ plus. The battle hardened was limited, but yeah,
Y'all about to discover the EV of a doubting goat, of doubting a goat, the goat. I think I don't know. I think the reason we bring this up and the part that I'm dancing around is there's
yeah,
a healthy amount of people who don't set realistic expectations with their deck
yes,
or themselves. Like,
yeah,
okay, I can play 3 games every Sunday, and I want to go to the calling and make day 2. You might not be able to do that anymore. Like you might luck into it, but it's
probably
like
not.
you're not testing regularly a couple times a week or even, for many hours on one day of the week. So you're setting expectations without considering yourself. Or you decide to bring a pet deck and you're like, okay, I'm definitely making day 2 with this Betsy deck. And it's like, okay, but you're not you,
Yeah,
it's all about the expectations, and I feel like some people don't set their expectations appropriately, and then they just get upset
yep,
or disappointed. They're upset
yep.
at the deck, or they're upset at their opponents, and it's like,
No, it's about healthy goal setting.
Everyone likes
And
the idea of being able to show up and win,
yeah,
but a lot of people put a lot of effort into it, and you got to match that. And
you probably have to do more than that.
yeah, you got to do more than that, and you have to be you need to be prepared for the event, not just in playing the game, hard work, putting in the reps, but also you have to be prepared in picking a correct deck. You can't just win with any deck. You
Yeah,
can't win with every tier 2 deck. There's a reason they're tier 2. It's because they're not going to win
yeah,
as often. They're not going to be as
they are
explosive,
not
whatever the
as
answer
strong.
is. Yeah.
And it's like as you go down tiers, the amount of time you have to put into the deck to get even to the theoretical win percentages it
hmm
gets goes up probably multiplicatively.
And if you're also not in a position, and it's if you're not in a position to be able to do something like that, I don't know. You have
It
kids or you have 2 jobs or something like that. You have to set expectations to where you're at, even if it feels bad, right?
which
Like,
is probably at that point not winning.
yeah,
It is doing as well as you can and
yes,
seeing what can happen,
that's
but
good.
also understanding that your odds of winning are significantly lower than the people
hmm
around you
hmm
because uh, it's about time. The people who are doing well at this game are the ones who are putting a ridiculous amount of time.
You were talking about lower tiered heroes. Mansant was putting in more hours than probably anyone was putting in
Anyone.
any deck into
Yes.
Levia, and was seeing
Yes.
he was actually, he wasn't seeing the best results ever. He was seeing good results often.
He was seeing results that you would be happy with on any or most people would have been happy with on any deck.
Yeah. But on Levia, when
On
she
Leviathan.
was not playable,
Yeah.
like genuinely just not playable in anybody else's
Yeah.
hands. And so that's what I mean about, it's the amount of time and preparation you can put into practicing, learning, knowing the deck, but also like, I don't know, if your goal is to win, start with a good deck and then go from there probably.
Yeah. If you're not
If your
on one
goal
of
is to win.
the decks that is in tier 1 or near the top of tier 2, if your goal is to win some event that's coming up,
Mhm.
you need to be willing to change decks. In my opinion, you
Mhm.
should be willing to change decks.
Yeah. At some point when the goals
Yeah.
are lofty enough, they will
Yeah.
require you to shift gears when needed.
They require more sacrifice.
Sacrifice. Oh, that's such a word I
'Cause
should have
that
thought of
that
like
sums up
30 minutes
everything.
ago. Yeah.
Yeah. 'Cause it's
Uh,
whether it's time or the fun you would have playing this other deck, if your goal is to win,
you can day 2 with Betsy. It's going to take some sacrifice. That's going to be
it's gonna
time.
take different sacrifices
Different
than day
sacrifices.
2ing with Aurora.
Yes. Day 2 with Aurora's sacrifice is you're that guy who brought Aurora and made day 2.
And
Uh,
was good at
well,
yeah,
yeah,
like,
you need to be good
was
enough,
good
but
enough at the
also.
game that you could reasonably switch on to the deck,
Mhm.
and it's a
Oh,
strong
yeah,
deck. It
true.
does
Yeah.
something powerful enough
Mhm.
where it's like, you could reasonably make that switch because you'd played Fi, you'd played Briar,
And if
like,
and if you ask Captive Goat, the sacrifice you'd have to make for playing Jarl is knowing
your soul.
your soul. You'd have to sacrifice your soul because they're a guardian. I'm sorry, Al said I was gonna bring you on, but I was I was thinking we
We
were gonna get wrapped up right now.
yeah,
Was the main thing. So I think that's it. We talked about
yeah.
one subject for a whole episode. Look at us.
We kinda went through 2.
Yeah, it was all over the place a bit too.
Yeah.
Um,
It all flowed together well enough.
Consider my take. Hyper concentrating on a deck and waiting for it to get the Azalea treatment is the ultimate sacrifice for the hyper long game. I love that
Yeah,
actually, and I kind of think about that with Guardians in general. Right, Guardians are going through a low spot right now.
yeah,
That's because they were at a high spot, and LSS has talked about the ebb and flow of decks and metas. I'm
yeah.
playing. I'm
Well,
right
it's
there
like,
with you. I'm playing the long game.
that was Lexi.
Oh, that was Lexi.
That was Lexi and Azalea. Like, that's
Yeah,
literally what Allison's talking about,
started
is,
low and then they came up.
like, Lexi was a decent deck, an
Yeah,
alright deck,
yeah.
and then Outsiders comes out, and Ranger runs the meta, and all the Lexi players. Interestingly, a lot of the Lexi players didn't like Fuseless Lexi, but suddenly Lexi's just the best deck.
Yeah.
And all the Lexi players are like, dope.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah. We've been waiting.
And all the Azalea players are like, oh, they just put, because all the Azalea players who were Azalea players, or not all of them, a lot more Azalea players who played before Outsiders liked post Outsiders Azalea. Then Lexi players pre Outsiders liked post Outsiders
all of
Lexi.
Az and his followers were like freaking
Levi.
out. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Levi was very happy.
Yeah. Because I remembered hearing
but,
about
Levi
him
got
before.
super paid off.
Yeah. Yeah. He did very well.
Like he top 4'd a Battle Harden with Azalea pre Outsiders, and everyone lost their minds.
Yeah.
And then like the first 2 events are like realm events or realm min-max events in Chicago. And he just like top 2s both of them with Azalea.
You know,
like release weekend.
This is reminding me of is Alexander Vore, where he was playing Kano before Brendan's. Well, I think it was like Mutual Discovery, but the like.
I think it was independent, simultaneous.
Yeah. Not is Mutual. Wait, what's the
simultaneous?
Simultaneous Discovery.
Or independent, one of those.
Whatever the term is. Where they both kind of found this wildfire deck, and it's like,
yep.
I'd heard about him playing Kano and like getting a top 8 in an event, and I was like, Kano can't top 8 in CC. That's not what he does. That's in his hero ability. And then
Wildfire shows up at PT New Jersey and is blowing people out of the fucking water.
And talking about ebbing and flowing of heroes, Wizards have ebbed and flowed more than any hero. They changed their viability week by week.
Pretty much. Yeah.
I think that wraps it up. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
I think I'm good.
Let's see. Do you have any shout outs?
We can get to LL Weapons next week.
LL Weapons is off the list. We've already talked about it.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, I've taken it off. The meme's dead.
Okay.
We're gonna have to find a new one. Yeah, Bit's dead.
Damn it.
Well, I mean, we talked about it for like 5 minutes with Mara, and I was like,
after the
recording ended, a few people got to listen to us talk about it on stream. Those people are real. But scratch that itch enough to where it's off the thing now.
Sure.
I'll get to ask you next week what the LL meta is, and you get to tell me what exactly the LL meta looks like tier 0 all the way through tier 8.
Sure.
Where I think Bravo's at tier 8.
Sounds about right.
This Sunday, for everyone in chat, this Sunday, noon, Eastern time, the Table Pit Live.
Are you sure you want to do it then when Calling Portland is going to be doing their day 2?
Yes, because that's when we've had it scheduled for a month now.
Sure. Yep.
When did they get? How long ago did they schedule Portland? What, like a few weeks ago? They should have thought about the fact that we're going live. Ago. No, disagree. LSS's OP needs to. I mean, it's going to be on a weekend. I think the best time for a lot of people is right before our local armory because that gives them an excuse to be in town.
Yeah.
And that just ends up being like the time a lot of day 2 events, day 3 events are like going on, which is a little inconvenient, but it's I don't know.
Yeah.
The Table Pit Live in person UPF gameplay live. You can be in chat like Allison is right now, memeing at how Ridge missed a trigger. Which is going to be
every 5 minutes. Let's go.
Ridge can be like, judge by the way.
Get his judge status pulled.
Judge by the way. Get it pulled. Okay. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.